Hey, it's Steph from Happy Place to Grow. And before you watch this video, I just want to give you the heads up. Stay with me until the very end. I know you're going to enjoy this one. I'm going to be sharing with you about how to set up and work through some collaborative learning stations. Our topic today is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you some resources that I use as I'm teaching on this topic. I'm also going to share some photos of my students actually participating in these collaborative learning stations. So just hang with me to the end, and I know you're going to scoop up some valuable information today. All right, enjoy the video. Hey, it's Steph from Happy Place to Grow. I am here at home enjoying a day off. Yes, it is a holiday today. It is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And, you know, as I've been here reflecting on this great and inspirational man, I thought it would be a great time to share some activities that I do in my classroom to help my students understand the reason behind the holiday. Now, before I share with you some activities, I thought it would be also important for us to get back to the first days of school. You know, we're going through this book and I am scooping up some quotes for us as teachers because we are the difference. We make the difference. The class doesn't start until we walk into the room. So I'm in chapter 6, and this chapter is really appropriate for our discussion about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because it's talking about expectations and success, and what a better model for, there's no better model for us than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was definitely inspirational and successful. All right, first of all, an expectation is just something we believe will or will not happen. There are two kinds of expectations according to this little study. It says there are positive or high expectations, negative or low expectations. Now, we know as teachers, we make the difference. So here's the quote. Your expectations of your students will greatly influence their achievement in your class and in their lives. Wow, that's powerful. So now think of the two types of expectations, high and low, and the fact that you are going to greatly influence their achievement with your expectations. So we as teachers definitely need to set the bar very high. We need to believe in our students because they can achieve those expectations as we support, guide, and help them and believe in them. All right, let's get started with the activities so that students can learn and grow in our classrooms. Now, these 4 activities that I'm going to share with you are just a few of what I would be doing in my classroom. You know, when you're learning about any topic, it's not going to be done in one day. And of course, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there's so many resources out there. So before I would do these final 4 activities, these would be my closure activities, I would already have taken days to cover this topic. I would have been using some books, nonfiction books. I would have been using a Scholastic or Weekly Readers, and then also YouTube videos because there are just so many resources out there to pull in and help your students to understand the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So these 4 activities would be done on the tail end of all of the classroom learning, the whole group learning that we would have already done. So, all right, let me walk you over here to my board. I've got 4 activities. The first activity is not necessarily the first activity that they would do, because these activities are going to be collaborative. They're going to be done in small groups. So the first thing I would be doing before we would be covering the stations is I would be forming groups. Now, I did do this with my students, and I formed, I'm a paper and pencil person for sure. I formed 4 groups. Now, I'm not sure how you like to form your groups. For this activity, I actually was really thinking about 4 students in my class that I thought were not shy, love to talk and communicate, and I wanted to separate those 4. So I put those as my team leaders, and I can't remember if I actually let the team leaders select the following students that were in the groups, or if I selected, however that works for you in your classroom. You're just going to have to divide your students up. I definitely make sure that I had some students in there that were talkers and sharers, and then some that could balance the group out. I also went through and decided what 4 activities to include. This is the tricky part about stations and collaborative learning activities. If you have multiple stations, you're going to have to try to make sure that they're all pretty equitable as far as the jobs and the time that it takes. Or if one is going to go by quicker than the others, then you're going to have something else for them to do, or the next step. So that's always tricky. So I just went through and wrote down, what I wanted to see with the groups for each station. And of course, when you allow your students to collaborate and talk, which really works in really well with your discussion about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because he was all about teamwork. So this activity, going through these stations, this is going to really even be a life skill that's going to play right into his dream, of course. So, and these are just my ideas. You could substitute and do whatever stations work for you. So station number 1, which again would not necessarily be the first station they would go to, it would be one station they would visit. And I included with this station timeline, because with Martin Luther King, he did certain events happened in an order. And I had a couple different timelines when I did this, but I selected one. Here's the blank, here's the answer key, and then they would cut and glue the boxes of information into the timeline grid. I would have this available for them and information available for them. This would be the one that if I was going to navigate through and help the students a little bit and support them, this would be the one, because there's a lot of words here. They can definitely copy the answer key and then put the events in, but this one would need a little adult support. The directions just basically say that they're going to look at the information, put it in order, cut and glue, and use the information cards. I had little cards there for them to navigate through the information, and then talk about and discuss his life and the timeline of information together as a group. So that would be the timeline. And then number 2 is a portrait that they would make. This is an activity that I actually got on Pinterest. And I love arts. I love to include art in my learning activities. So this was a picture that I printed off of Pinterest. I Have a Dream. And it's really simple to put together. This is definitely something they could do independently. I created just some little stencils for them to trace. This was my model that I had at the group area, and they just worked together and each one did their own art project. And then they could, my directions say for them to do the portrait project, discuss the life of Martin Luther King as they're working, when he was young, even communicate with each other how maybe things were, what life was like when he was young and how life is different now. And then it says, just talk about how he helped to change things in our country. And then finally, the dream part, they can just share their dream for today, how they would help, how they would like to see people get along, what they would like to see. So that would be portrait and dream. Now this one would definitely take a little bit longer. These two stations would be pretty equitable. I think they would be pretty the same time length. This one might go a little bit faster. It's called Dove Art and Big Words. So we've got our piece dove, and what I would have the students do, it says select a dove color because I had different colors for the doves. Use white chalk to fill in. So if you have chalk available, if not, you can use a white crayon, or if you're brave, you can grab some white paint and let them paint the dove. That would be number one. And then number two, they're thinking about the story Martin's Big Words, a great read aloud. You must read this or listen to a reading of it on YouTube. Excellent story. So I would have already read that with my students. And then they would select a word, thinking about referring back to Martin's Big Words. This is where vocabulary definitely can come in. And I would have several words displayed: kindness, friendship, harmony, peace. And we would have went over these vocabulary words many times, so they would be familiar. They can select their word, and each student in the group can do their own. So they can all do the same, or they can do different. And again, I'm brave, but you could use markers if you want. My students painted, and I would have, of course, a model. And that would be station 3. Now, station 4 is definitely one that you may want to grab a volunteer or work this out in a couple different ways. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kid President. Of course, when he started making his videos on YouTube, he was young. He is older now, but I just find his videos so funny and cute and inspirational, and I love for the kids to see a kid making a difference on YouTube and sending out good positive messages. So in this station, I had a green screen background, and the students would, first of all, as a group, get together and discuss Martin Luther's life, Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, his dream. They would talk about their feelings and their advice as the Kid President. Of course, they would have seen this video. And then as a group, they're going to select a short message. They're going to discuss and get together as a group and compile a short message to deliver via video. They're going to decide who is going to speak, or if they're all going to speak, and practice their message and then record it. So the recording part is the part where you'll, if you have a volunteer, if you have someone, hey, though, you know, kids are pretty tech savvy, so somebody in the group may for sure be able to navigate the camera if you have an iPad or a tablet. So that part you'll have to figure out. And you can have them record their message and to share it. So that is a really fun one. Now, the final thing that I would do with my students once they have completed these groups, again, how you navigate the time of the groups, you could do, if you have a whole day, that you can just let them rotate through each group. If you can have a morning slot that they can do it, or an afternoon slot, or hey, if you want to take just a portion of 4 days for them to do it. The final day or the final session, you all get back together as a whole group, and then you let each team share. So again, you're going to want them to share something that they've learned. The groups can all get up as a group to share. They can have one representative to share. They'll have to, again, discuss that and make a decision about who will be sharing and what they will share. I allowed my students to share their favorite station. I allowed them to share some things that they learned, and also about teamwork. I asked them to share the things that they struggled with, as well as the positives of working in a group. And that was a really good way to close up the 4 learning stations. So these collaborative learning stations will definitely provide your students with the opportunity to solve problems, to share, to get along, to work through things. So don't be afraid to try some new learning opportunities and set those expectations high for your students, because you are the difference and they can do it. All right, until our next time together, enjoy your Martin Luther King Jr. Day off. And as always, have a good one.